Fresh face, so fresh, so face. AOC enters the swamp. Bernie takes the lead, and President Trump's enemies drive themselves fully insane. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. A little behind the scenes for you. Every night before I come in and do the show in the morning, I put together a preliminary schedule, and sometimes the schedule just blows itself up in the morning, and I have to rejigger the entire schedule so as to bring you the latest in news. That happened this morning, and there's a lot of news, and it's pretty awesome. We're going to get to all of it in just a second. First, let's talk about the blinds that you have on your windows. Now, I know, you look around your apartment, you think, this place looks pretty nice, but something seems dingy. You know what it is? It's your window coverings. This is why you need Blinds.com. Let's be honest, taking the time to pick out and buy blinds sounds expensive, kind of boring. Installing them yourself sounds harder than any self-respecting adult wants to admit, but Blinds.com makes it super easy for you. Not sure what you want or even where to start? With Blinds.com, you get a free online design consultation. You just send them pictures of your house. They send back custom recommendations from a professional for what will work with your color scheme, your furniture, and specific rooms. They will even send you free samples to make sure everything looks as good in person as it does online, and every order gets free shipping. And here's the best part. Let's say you mess up, you accidentally mismeasure, or you pick the wrong color. If you make a mistake, Blinds.com will remake your blinds for free, which is a pretty awesome guarantee. They've really made it easy for you. There is no excuse to leave up those mangled blinds that make it look like you are living in some sort of public housing hellhole. For a limited time, get 20% off everything at Blinds.com when you use promo code BEN. That is Blinds.com, promo code BEN for 20% off everything. Faux wood blinds, cellular shades, roller shades, and more. Blinds.com, promo code BEN. Rules and restrictions do apply. Blinds.com, promo code BEN. Alrighty, so we begin today with some unfortunate news. Some unfortunate news for AOC. You remember her. She's the fresh face of the Democratic Party. Incredibly fresh as well as incredibly face. Well, it turns out, according to Luke Thompson, a reporter over at Medium, he has a piece up today called "The Congresswoman Loves the Swamp." Sad trombone sound, guys. Here is what Luke Thompson writes. Last Friday, my mentions died for your sins. I posted a screen grab of Riley Roberts' House Microsoft Outlook card, including his official House.gov email address, office phone number, and his designation as staff. Roberts is the boyfriend of Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. The Congresswoman was upset. Throwing caution to the wind, she stormed into my mentions, asserting this was just a way to give Mr. Roberts access to her official calendar. Her chief of staff, Saikat Chakrabarty, soon followed, reiterating the calendar claim and accusing me of doxing Mr. Roberts by posting his publicly available LinkedIn profile, which he deleted, and his official government address and the office phone number. By the way, putting up a government email address and phone number, that does not qualify as doxing. Neither AOC nor Chakrabarty said why Roberts needs access to her official calendar. Regardless, hordes of her howling minions followed. I was briefly suspended by Twitter for revealing personal information, only to be released with an apology when I pointed out that everything I posted is government property and therefore public. My brief stint as a digital political prisoner turned into something of a cause celeb on the right, inviting wave upon wave of MAGA enthusiasts to battle back on my behalf against the forces of digital socialism. My timeline is still a wasteland. This is what this reporter writes. During my suspension, I talked to a congressional spouse, a few reporters, and some staffers from both parties. AOC hasn't exactly been winning friends lately, which is how I got Roberts' Outlook screen grab in the first place. A rumor on the Hill was circulating that Roberts had attended a Congressional Progressive Caucus meeting. A tipster looked to see if he'd been given staff credentials. It appeared he had. All agreed this was irregular if he was just a spouse. Per the House Admin Office, a family member can, in special circumstances, get a House.gov email address. But Roberts is not a family member, and although AOC referred to him as her partner in November of last year, she omitted him from her mandatory candidate financial disclosures for 2017 and 2018. Perhaps they've gotten married since. If so, if he's her spouse now, we should see his finances disclosed along with hers in her 2019 disclosure form due in May. But to be clear, AOC did not disclose Roberts' finance as a spouse during her campaign. Regardless, absent a waiver from House Ethics, family members have to be volunteers. AOC's office apparently doesn't believe in having unpaid workers, as according to Chakrabarty, they have no volunteers in the office. So Roberts is designated as staff, but also isn't on AOC's staff, even though he showed up Friday morning in the House directory as processing into her personal office as a staffer. In other words, his staff status, like his spouse status, is akin to Schrodinger's cat. This ought to have been enough to make it clear that AOC's story didn't add up. More importantly, I'd clearly hit a nerve. So Luke Thompson writes over at Medium. Chakrabarty, who is, again, AOC's chief of staff, spent much of his day in my mentions insisting that everything was on the up and up with Roberts. Instead of asking if Roberts had been supplied with the badge and pin appropriate to a congressional spouse, evidence of which her office should have been able to produce easily, AOC's worshipful stenographers in the press went into overdrive, witlessly repeating her talking points. Jeff Stein over at the Washington Post even woke up Saturday to keep it going in my mentions, as did Chakrabarty himself. And of course, AOC had decided to get into it. That's a lot of time and effort spent refuting a GOP consultant known to a tiny corner of the internet for posting cat pictures and bitching about the doctrine of co-equal branches. So I went to the FCC, did a little searching, and discovered that lo and behold, there is more to the story. Now, during the original kerfluffle, some folks noticed that AOC's campaign had paid Roberts $1,750. That is not quite what transpired. Roberts was paid only as a means of keeping accounting in order. In the first half of 2018, Roberts did some free work for the campaign. That work got put on the books as an in-kind contribution and then discharged as an expenditure for accounting purpose. That is perfectly normal. It's a way to keep people from circumventing federal contribution caps by providing discounted or free services. But that is not the only political work Roberts ostensibly did during the cycle. Nor would it be the first time Chakrabarty had hired Roberts. He's done so at least once before in 2017, although it's unlikely Roberts was hired to do any actual work in that case. So here is where things get a little dicey for AOC. At the beginning of 2017, Chakrabarty created Brand New Congress, an organization dedicated to shaking things up in Democratic primaries. It's a rather ingenious organization, but one that dwells in a legal gray area as far as campaign finance law is concerned. It facilitates campaigns on shoestring budgets by providing a single clearinghouse for campaign services generally filed under the banner of strategic consulting. But as a result, it limits the meaningfulness of FEC disclosures by these campaigns. Additionally, it means that Brand New Congress, unlike most PACs, spends most of its budget on overhead and makes relatively few actual contributions to candidates. Additionally, Brand New Congress is not one thing, but rather two. It's a non-qualified political action committee, a PAC, that can raise and bundle campaign contributions for candidates. Donations and expenditures from PACs like those to and by candidates are publicly disclosed. However, Brand New Congress is also an LLC owned by Chakrabarty. Remember, Chakrabarty is AOC's chief of staff, that provides campaign services to candidates to help lower the barriers to entry. LLCs do not have to disclose or itemize their spending. This is a clever way to try to make running for office easier and to place a lot of small bets on a lot of insurgent candidates and hope for a few lucky wins. And that pretty much seems to be what happened. According to FEC records, the PAC was founded in mid-January of 2017. At the end of February, it affiliated with Justice Democrats, a collaboration between Chakrabarty and Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks. The two organizations are inextricably linked. Chakrabarty lists himself as a co-founder of both Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats on his LinkedIn page. Over the course of the cycle, Justice Democrats would pay Brand New Congress, LLC, $605,849. They would also share an address. In May, Brand New Congress changed the address for its custodian of records to Tennessee. In August, it switched addresses again, but in December of 2017, Justice Democrats registered at the same address. AOC also used that Tennessee address in her first candidate filing, which incorrectly registered her to run in New York's 15th congressional district. 5 days later, she switched to the 14th, and 2 months after that, the campaign committee's address was changed to the Bronx as well. A quick tour through AOC's campaign expenditures reveals the extent to which Brand New Congress midwifed her campaign into existence, precisely as the frequently asked questions described would have had it. But AOC's campaign was different from others backed by Brand New Congress PAC, and not simply because she won. Like other candidates, AOC paid Brand New Congress LLC for strategic consulting, in her case totaling $18,880. Unlike in the other cases, Brand New Congress PAC turned around and paid her boyfriend as a marketing consultant. Indeed, while Brand New Congress PAC's 10 largest expenditures were paid to Brand New Congress LLC for strategic consulting, a sum that totaled $261,000 over the course of her campaign, its 11th and 12th largest expenditures were paid to Riley Roberts. Brand New Congress PAC paid Roberts $3,000 on August 9th. 18 days later, AOC's campaign paid Brand New Congress $6,191. A month later, Brand New Congress then turned around and paid Riley another $3,000. So why would Chakrabarty, a founding engineer at Stripe and wealthy veteran of Silicon Valley, be hiring a no-name UX experience guy with little discernible marketing experience to serve as Brand New Congress PAC's sole marketing consultant? The answer seems to be that Chakrabarty was funneling money paid to him by AOC's campaign back to Roberts and by extension to AOC. In other words, AOC's campaign, she raised a bunch of money, she paid her chief of staff, who had a consulting firm, and he, in turn, paid the money directly to her boyfriend. This is the allegation by Luke Thompson, which is pretty swampy. At the beginning of October, more than 4 months into her campaign, AOC's fundraising had been anemic. Excluding an in-kind contribution from Chakrabarty, she raised only $3,000, but had already spent $27,000, more than half of which she had paid to Chakrabarty's Brand New Congress LLC. By the end of 2017, she'd spent $37,000, but raised only $8,000. That's a lot of money to stick on a credit card. Since no loans are recorded on her campaign books, presumably either AOC or Roberts was fronting the necessary cash. It looks to me like Chakrabarty was effectively reimbursing AOC for a third of her expenses with Brand New Congress LLC, perhaps so that she would stay in the race despite her mounting debt. The shadiness of the whole business may also explain why Roberts, who is AOC's boyfriend, lists his residence as Arizona for the expenditure rather than New York. Roberts is from Arizona, but was living in New York with AOC. His other contributions to her campaign, both cash and in kind, list New York as his residence. Regardless of whether or not Roberts was officially AOC's spouse at that time, it seems probable Chakrabarty was reimbursing her for her campaign expenses off books. Brand new Congress PAC simply served as a pass-through to do so. When AOC won, she then hired Chakrabarty as her chief of staff, taking money from a rich guy, trying to hide it by passing it through a PAC, and then giving her benefactor a government job. That is definitely unethical and potentially illegal. So in other words, she was raising money, but it wasn't clear that she was actually raising enough money to pay her boyfriend. So she just went to Chakrabarty and said, why don't you float my boyfriend the money, is the suggestion here. That's the allegation. And then she went and hired the guy who gave her boyfriend a loan on congressional staff dollars. Chakrabarty may have made an illegal campaign contribution in excess of federal limits. Regardless, it raises questions about Chakrabarty's hiring as AOC's chief of staff after her election. But all of the above is based on public information, says the reporter. It took me a couple of hours to pull it all together and write it up. Reporters are just lazy. So that is not a great story for AOC, who is, remember, she is the fresh new face, so face of the Democratic Party, very much against the swamp, against corruption. And now it turns out that she may, in fact, have been violating campaign law. At the very least, she was working with a firm that was apparently funneling money back to her via her boyfriend, which is really corrupt. And it turns out that then she hires the head of that firm as her chief of staff. Now, I'm old enough to remember when Dinesh D'Souza went to jail for illegal campaign contributions. I'm old enough to remember that. So don't give me the everybody breaks the rules if you're on the left. I don't believe in campaign finance rules, by the way. Like, if it were up to me, I don't really care what happens with all this stuff. Chakrabarty wants to give AOC's boyfriend some money, and then he wants to join her office. Whatever. I don't really care because money in politics is endemic to politics. That's just the way things work. It doesn't bother me all that much. I will say, however, that the massive hypocrisy of members of Congress doing this kind of stuff and then claiming that they are standing for truth, justice, and the Soviet way is pretty astonishing. And Congress, indeed, is getting crazier pretty much all the time. I mean, AOC, you'll recall, is a radical of high order, and so are a lot of her fellow members of Congress. This is why they're talking tax rates of 90%, eliminating private health care, abortion to the point of birth, a Green New Deal that would cost $50 trillion. This is all insane. Congress isn't changing anytime soon, and neither is either party. But we can stop the abuse of federal power right now. We can call a convention of states. The states can get together to propose amendments to the Constitution to impose term limits, a balanced budget, and put limits on the power of the federal government. Congress has no power to stop us. 13 states have already passed it. We are working on the remaining states right now. To fix the broken system in Washington, you should add your voice to the call for a convention of states, of which I am a fan. So join me and my friend Mark Meckler and sign the petition at conventionofstates.com/Ben. To get involved, go to conventionofstates.com/Ben. That is indeed conventionofstates.com/Ben. There are a lot of folks who will say, well, at a convention of states, will you have a runaway convention? No, you won't have a runaway convention because the convention of states is going to be called largely by conservative states, and conservative delegates are going to be the ones writing up the proposed constitutional amendments that would help shore up a lot of the holes that have been poked into the Constitution by the left over the last century and a half. Go check it out at conventionofstates.com/Ben and join and add your voice to the call for a convention of states. That is conventionofstates.com/Ben, conventionofstates.com/Ben. Well, all of this is bad news for AOC, obviously, because she poses herself as above the fray, purer than the driven snow, an ideologue of ideologues. And I mean, she's doing so like today. Like she's calling out CNN for corruption. The same day that it turns out that she may have actually been funneling money via her chief of staff to her boyfriend, it turns out that she is calling out CNN. Why is she calling out CNN? Because the left is very angry at CNN today. I know. It's like the Iran-Iraq war. Who do you root for exactly? But the left is very upset with CNN. Why? Well, they're upset because they hired Sarah Isker Flores, who's a former spokeswoman for Jeff Sessions. They hired her as one of their political editors to help oversee coverage of the 2020 presidential campaign. And this prompted AOC, so fresh, so face, to say in a tweet, sorry, didn't get the latest memo. After 1,000 experienced and qualified journalists of all stripes were let go without warning a few weeks ago and still looking for work. Are we still pretending that hires like these are evidence of a meritocracy? I remember when AOC was just this upset about George Stephanopoulos being the chief political correspondent for NBC, or ABC rather, after being Hillary Clinton's chief of staff. I recall her being super upset when the brother of Ben Rhodes, who was the national security advisor under Barack Obama, was the head of CBS News. I remember her being super upset about Chris Cuomo, who was Andrew Cuomo's brother, being a news anchor on CNN. I mean, I remember her being upset about all these things. It's very upsetting. It's very upsetting. The amount of hatred for anyone who has served in the Trump administration going back into the press is pretty astonishing. I'm going to get to more of that in just 1 second. There's a story from the Daily Beast pointing out how terrible this is. By the way, full disclosure, I know Sarah Isker Flores. She and I went to Harvard Law School at the same time. Very nice gal, highly qualified, extremely intelligent. And being a political editor at CNN just means you sort of help choose which stories to cover. CNN having one person who voted for Trump on staff is not the end of the world, guys. It's totally okay. It's totally okay. I love the people in the press who have been passing back and forth out of Democratic administrations as long as I have been alive. Remember, Jay Carney, the Obama spokesperson, used to work for Time magazine. They've been passing in and out of this for a very long time. Now, all of a sudden, it's shock that somebody who worked for Jeff Sessions, who, by the way, President Trump was not particularly fond of, is now going to be working over at CNN. According to the Daily Beast, CNN staffers are upset and confused about the network's decision to hire a partisan political operative to oversee its 2020 campaign reporting. Again, this has never happened before. Partisan political operatives at major news networks? Say it ain't so. No, that might be impossible. On Tuesday, a CNN spokesperson confirmed to Daily Beast that the network had hired Republican political advisor Sarah Isker as the politics editor helming CNN's 2020 coverage. The move was first reported by Politico. Isker served as an advisor to Ted Cruz and Mitt Romney. She was Carly Fiorina's deputy campaign manager for the 2016 Republican primary, and then she worked for Jeff Sessions. A CNN spokesperson said Isker will not be involved in the network's DOJ coverage, but will guide TV and digital coverage of the 2020 election, occasionally offering on-screen analysis as well. One network editorial staffer said it's extremely demoralizing for everyone here, because if there's a Republican in here, man, how are we even going to talk to people? People are generally confused, said another editorial employee, adding the decision to hire a partisan operative for an editorial position comes off as very bizarre. CNN's reliable sources anchor Brian Stelter reported on the network's perspective, tweeting, "Love it or hate it, political insiders have been joining newsrooms for decades. The more viewpoints represented in newsrooms, the better. As for the critiques, CNN PR declined to comment." Okay, that is 100% true. It is 100% true. There are so many members of political campaigns in newsrooms that the false objective journalismic nonsense that you hear from these newsrooms, it has been alive for a very, very long time. Nonetheless, people are very upset on the left because Isker should never be allowed in a newsroom. Just terrible. Just awful. CNN's Jeff Zucker has said before he wanted to bring a little more balance to the newsroom, so it really shouldn't be that big a shock, but anytime any Republican is hired by any major outlet, it becomes an issue for that outlet. Not a particular surprise, at all. Okay, meanwhile, Trump derangement syndrome has gone completely off the rails. The latest indicator is not just the Jussie Smollett case, but President Trump put out a policy yesterday. He was going to launch a global campaign to decriminalize homosexuality in dozens of nations where anti-gay laws are still on the books. Now, this seems like a policy that pretty much everybody can get behind. Right, left, center. No one really believes that it should be criminal activity for gay people to have sex with each other. Right? That is not a thing that anyone really believes in Western civilization anymore. Whether you believe that this activity is a sin or not, the idea of a government busting into somebody's bedroom and prosecuting them for their private activity is something that no person who believes in a free society should really be in favor of. Consenting adults participating in activity of which you do not approve does not give you the license as a government to go in and stop them from doing what they want to do. And President Trump, who, by the way, has been very LGBTQ friendly, particularly LGB friendly, he's been very gay friendly. This is not a surprise coming from him. Right? His ambassador to Germany is Rich Grenell, who is an openly gay man. President Trump held up a gay pride flag in the middle of his campaign in 2016. How weird is Trump derangement syndrome? Trump derangement syndrome is so strong that gay magazines are now angry at President Trump for attempting to decriminalize homosexuality in a variety of nations around the world. Out magazine has an article today. Here's what it is called. Trump's plan to decriminalize homosexuality is an old racist tactic. What now? So Iran hangs gay people. Trump says, don't do that. And that's because he's a racist. When you are so woke, when your brain is so woke that you are actually brain dead, that's where we are right now. So I do not understand this. Legitimately, it's impossible to understand this sort of logic because it's completely illogical. So Iran hangs gay people, and you're like, that's multiculturalism. He's cracking down on multiculturalism by telling them to stop hanging gay people from cranes. So Out Magazine has a piece by Matthew Rodriguez. It says, While on its surface, the move looks like an atypically benevolent decision by the Trump administration, the details of the campaign belie a different story. Rather than actually being about helping queer people around the world, the campaign looks like more like an instance of the right using queer people as pawns to amass power and enact its own agenda. They say that the most telling detail of NBC News' report is that his plan centers homophobic violence in Iran, who NBC News calls the administration's top geopolitical foe. So really, what they are saying is that it's very bad that Trump is anti-Iran on the basis of them hanging gay people from cranes, because we don't want to go to war with Iran because we like Iran, even though they hang gay people from cranes, which is weird. And it's not just this Out magazine article. Human Rights Campaign put out a tweet storm saying the Trump-Pence administration has consistently worked to undermine the fundamental equality of LGBTQ people and our families from day one. And they have a long thread about how terrible it is that they made this decision. They say if this commitment is real, we have a lot of questions about their intentions and commitments and are eager to see what proof and action will follow. So if your first reaction to the Trump administration doing something incredibly benevolent on behalf of gay people the world over is we are deeply suspicious that this is another racist move by the Trump derangement syndrome, man, that is some strong stuff these people are smoking. I mean, it's deadly. Trump derangement syndrome has now reached deadly proportions. It's fully crazy. In a second, I'll give you the latest on the Jussie Smollett case, which demonstrates that Trump derangement syndrome can actually lead you directly to prison. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, let us talk about how you defend your rights. When the founders crafted the Constitution, the first thing they did was to make sacred the rights of the individual to share their ideas without limitation by their government. The second right they enumerated was the right of the population to protect that speech and their own persons with force. You know how strongly I believe in these principles. I'm a gun owner. Owning a rifle is an awesome responsibility. Building rifles is no different. Bravo Company Manufacturing was started in a garage by a Marine vet more than 2 decades ago to build a professional-grade product that meets combat standards. BCM believes the same level of protection should be provided to every American, regardless of whether they're a private citizen or a professional. BCM is not a sporting arms company. They design, engineer, and manufacture life-saving equipment. They assume every rifle leaving their shop will be used in a life or death situation by a responsible citizen, law enforcement officer, or a soldier overseas. Each component of a BCM rifle is hand-assembled and tested by Americans to a life-saving standard. BCM feels a moral responsibility as Americans to provide tools that will not fail the user when it's not just a paper target, but someone coming to do them actual harm. To learn more about Bravo Company Manufacturing, head on over to BravoCompanyMFG.com, where you can discover more about their products, special offers, upcoming news. That is BravoCompanyMFG.com. If you need more convincing, go check them out at youtube.com/BravoCompanyUSA. You can meet the awesome people who make their products. BravoCompanyMFG.com. Go check them out right now and get yourself a nice weapon. I mean, you need to defend yourself. BravoCompanyMFG.com. So here's the latest on the Jussie Smollett case. The latest on the Jussie Smollett case is that the 2 brothers involved in the Jussie Smollett attack told police that Smollett was not just behind the fake attack. He was also behind creating a fake racist letter that was sent to the actor on the set of his show Empire, according to 2 sources with firsthand knowledge of the investigation. When the letter did not get a bigger reaction, Smollett then orchestrated the attack a week later with the 2 men, Ola and Abel Osundero, sources said. Also on Tuesday, sources said the 2 brothers were seen on a rideshare video camera before being dropped off near the location of the attack. Boop, 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 boop. Smollett received a letter containing a white powder on January 22nd. The letter was mailed to Chicago's Cinespace Studios, where the show Empire is filmed. The letter prompted a hazmat response. CPD said the white substance was later determined to be aspirin. The note was crafted with letters apparently cut out from magazines to form words. The pieced-together message contains racial and homophobic threats directed at Smollett. A magazine is one of the pieces of evidence retrieved from the brothers' home last week during a search conducted by CPD. Investigators also recovered a book of stamps. Geniuses. So, I mean, it's going to be kind of hilarious when it turns out that not only did they cut the letters from the magazine, they then kept the magazine. How good is that magazine? Like, you're committing a federal crime by sending in a threat through the mails, and you keep the magazine you cut the letters out from? Like, all you had to do was toss it in the recycling, guys. Really? So Jussie Smollett is obviously a troubled human being. He's obviously a seriously troubled human being who will end up in federal prison. I mean, this is now a federal crime. Once you start sending things through the mails, then you have a real problem. But the reason that people believed him is because they believed in a narrative about President Trump, the same way that Out Magazine believes a narrative about President Trump, that he's a brutal, terrible homophobe, and therefore everything that people say that is bad about Trump is true, and everything good they say must inevitably be false. Geraldo Rivera basically admitted this yesterday. He said, "We believed Smollett because racism is real."
charge like this was so incendiary. It caught on because it was, kind of justifying and reaffirming the stereotype that people had. I mean, it was so patently obvious, and yet, because it is so toxic, racism, and because we want justice in this country, we want people to have a fair shake, we bought this guy's unbelievable tale. Why do we believe these stories? Racism is real. Look at what happened in Charleston.
Agreed,
you assigned me to the church massacre.
Geraldo, admit,
that's a real story.
Okay, and it is true that people jump to these conclusions because they are eager to continue showing that America is a deeply racist, terrible place. And these hoaxes started long before President Trump. This isn't Trump derangement syndrome. This is America derangement syndrome for a lot of folks. This is people think that America is a terrible, awful, no good, very bad place steeped in racism, bigotry, sexism, homophobia. And therefore, in the attempt to continue painting America this way, every story that can be used as a data point in defense of that narrative will be pushed out there, will be promoted, will be trumpeted, will be made more audible. That is the goal of many members of the media. And it's a really sad goal. It's a really sad goal. And what you see over and over when it comes to this sort of America derangement syndrome is that any piece of data in favor of a silly narrative that is not true, that America is an awful, awful place, gets pushed to the absolute limit. America derangement syndrome is merely the broader version of Trump derangement syndrome. Trump is not America, and America is not Trump. But the anger at Trump existed for Bush. It exists for all conservatives. This is why when people say that Trump is being disproportionately hit, people hate Trump more than they've ever hated anyone else. That's true, but they also hated President Bush. And if Ted Cruz were president, there would be a Cruz derangement syndrome. The bottom line is that President Trump believes that America is not a terrible place. And this in and of itself is enough of a sin to earn him a derangement syndrome. Then on top of that, President Trump happens to be a very toxic, polarizing figure. He's a guy who says a lot of things that piss people off. But with all of that said, Trump derangement syndrome for the left is really a subset of a broader derangement syndrome. And this is why the left is trying to oust President Trump. It really has almost nothing to do with Trump. I mean, this is the great lie about President Trump. It's kind of, it really is fascinating. The great lie about President Trump is that President Trump is seen as an outlier from American politics. That is simply not true. If you go back to 2016 and you look at the percentages that he won, state by state, were very similar to the percentages that Mitt Romney won. The left paints every Republican with the same brush, which is one of the reasons Trump was nominated in the first place. Because Republicans said, fine, you're going to paint us with this brush? We'll just do this thing. You want a piece of this? Fine, come on. Here's a giant pulsating middle finger to you. His name is Donald Trump. But again, Trump derangement syndrome is just the latest iteration of an anti-American, anti-conservative derangement syndrome. When I say anti-American, I don't mean that folks can't be patriots or that they are hating America. What I am saying is that they paint a vision of America that's a lot darker in terms of its history and current presence than is warranted by the evidence. Meanwhile, speaking of Trump derangement syndrome, the media continue to push the narrative that President Trump is in the pay of Russia, again, without any evidence. Yesterday, Andrew McCabe, the former fired interim FBI director, he came out and he said on CNN, well, maybe President Trump is being paid by Russia. Maybe he's a Russian asset. Again, Andrew McCabe worked for the FBI. The FBI, I was led to believe over the course of my career and life, actually required evidence before making allegations like this. But Andy McCabe, posing as the quintessential Fed, says, no, maybe Trump really is in the pay of the Russians.
Do you still believe the president could be a Russian asset?
I think it's possible. I think that's why we started our investigation, and I'm really anxious to see where Director Mueller concludes that.
Okay, so he's got no evidence. He says it's possible, and we're supposed to just go along with that. Then a CNN national security analyst gets on TV and says Vladimir Putin could be controlling the White House. This is Samantha Vinograd, who served on the National Security Council under Barack Obama.
McCabe has said that the president's moves to undercut Russia-related investigations, to believe Vladimir Putin over his intelligence community, to make personnel decisions based upon Russia-related matters, all led to this investigation. McCabe would have laid that out before the Gang of Eight. This investigation is continuing, and there is still a chance that Vladimir Putin is controlling the White House.
Yeah, I mean, these are astonishing allegations that are being made without any real evidence that the allegations are true. But again, Trump derangement syndrome continues to be promoted across mainstream media. Now, in a second, we're going to jump into the 2020 race. We'll give you all the updates. Bernie Sanders has really shaken up the race and must be considered, until Joe Biden jumps in, the front runner in this race. We'll explain why in just a second. First, let's talk about your sleep quality. There's nobody on the planet like you. So why in the world would you buy a generic mattress that is built for a random human? Helix Sleep has built a sleep quiz. It takes 2 minutes to complete. They use the answers to match your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress. Whether you're a side sleeper or a hot sleeper, whether you like a plush or firm bed with Helix, there's no more guessing and no more confusion. Just go to helixsleep.com/Ben, take their 2-minute sleep quiz. They will match you to a mattress that will give you the best sleep of your life. For couples, Helix can even split the mattress down the middle, providing individual support needs and feel preferences for each side. They have a 10-year warranty. You get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free, so you really have nothing to lose. I can tell you, Helix Sleep mattresses, incredibly comfortable. My wife and I have one. It was tailored just for us. It really is phenomenal. Right now, Helix is offering up to $200 off mattress orders for their President's Day sale. So thank you, George Washington. Get up to $200 off at helixsleep.com/Ben. That is helixsleep.com/Ben for $200 off your mattress order for their President's Day sale going on right now. helixsleep.com/Ben. Go check them out right now. helixsleep.com/Ben. Get up to $200 off at helixsleep.com/Ben. Alrighty, so time for your 2020 update. Bernie Sanders jumped into the race yesterday, and he really shook things up. On his very first day in the race, Bernie Sanders raised, I kid you not, $4 million. Within 48 hours, he had raised more than $6 million. I mean, it is astonishing stuff. We'll get to that in just a second. First, you're going to have to go over to Daily Wire and subscribe. For $9.99 a month, you can get a subscription to Daily Wire. Not only that, for $99 a year, you can get the annual subscription, which comes along with all sorts of goodies, including 2 more hours per day of my show. Also, my new book, The Right Side of History, details the crisis of purpose that is happening right now in Western civilization. Again, the title of the book is The Right Side of History. If you want to know how we got here and how we can get back on track, pre-order today at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any major bookseller. I really can't wait to share it with you. That is coming out March 19th. Pre-order it now so it doesn't run out of stock. It's already selling really, really well. Go check it out right now. When you get the subscription for $99 a year, you get all sorts of goodies. You get to be behind the paywall with me, ask me questions during the breaks in the show. You get also this, the very greatest in beverage vessels, the Leftist Tears hot or cold tumbler. And right now, if you take a picture with your Leftist Tears hot or cold tumbler, and you hashtag it, Leftist Tears Tumbler, and you put it on Instagram or you put it on Twitter, then you may show up, your face may show up in all of its glory on The Ben Shapiro Show. So go check that out. Also, make sure you subscribe over at YouTube or iTunes, because then you get the Sunday special. Now, when you're a subscriber to Daily Wire, you get the Sunday special on Saturday, which means that you get it a day early for those of us keeping track at home. So go check that out. And our latest Sunday special is with the awesome Larry Elder, the first guy I ever did a radio interview with, actually, when I was 17 years old. Larry and I did a Sunday special. It really is a lot of fun.
Hi, I'm Larry Elder, and I'm participating in Ben Shapiro's Sunday special. We talk about Barack Obama, we talk about Donald Trump, we talk about race and racism, we talk about libertarianism, we talk about where the country is going. So check it out. It really is going to be riveting, if I do say so myself.
So much good stuff. Go check it out. YouTube, iTunes, leave us a review. We always appreciate it. We're the largest, fastest growing conservative radio show and podcast in the nation.